When it comes to fighting games, most people tend to think of platforms like the Sega Dreamcast and its magnificent library of fighting games. And as much as I love it, we aren't talking about that one today. Today we're going back to the Sony PlayStation 1, and we are ranking every single Fighter's Edge subset game on the console. 14 games in total. Let's kick things off right now. We're going worst to best.
In today's video, first is worst, and the one we're talking about up first is Star Gladiator. Now, Star Gladiator is an ambitious game. It goes away from everything Capcom normally does with its fighting games. First off, it's a 3D fighter. It doesn't use a 6-button configuration, it uses 4 buttons, so you've got 2 attacks, a kick attack, and a block. And it's kind of sparse, if I'm being honest with you. Like, there's nothing really great about this game. It's very slow. It doesn't really feel like a Capcom game. It feels like Capcom trying to ape someone else. And I don't know, it's just not terribly fun. Now, there's some neat characters in it. Hayato, the main character, is really awesome. Saturn Dyer is a really cool character. He's a green alien. I'm playing this velociraptor guy named Rimgul, who is apparently the character June's dad. June is not a raptor, but hey, it's the future, and it's Capcom science, so we're just going to roll with it. I did really enjoy the sequel on the Dreamcast, Plasma Sword, but this original version on the PS1 just didn't click for me. It's a little too slow, and it doesn't quite get to where I think it wanted to go. So I'm going to give Star Gladiator a D. And fun fact, this was actually started off as a concept for a Star Wars fighting game. All right, so we're out of the doldrums, we're out of the Ds, we're moving up to the average level. We're in the C rank now. And up first is the Street Fighter Collection. Now, for me, the Street Fighter Collection is just kind of a why. Like, there's nothing terribly wrong with this. All of the games on it are fine. You get Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2, and Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold, which is on a separate disc. And while that's great, again, it's kind of a why. Because we got all of these games in one way, shape, or form, not necessarily on the PlayStation, but just basically a previous generation ago. And I don't necessarily think a lot of people were clamoring for it. And especially today, I look at it and I go, this is just a superfluous purchase. I wouldn't have bought this when it came out. And truth be told, I didn't. The games play fine. And this is the only way you're going to get Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold on the PlayStation 1. But overall, just kind of an average, middle-of-the-road result for me. I'm going to give Street Fighter Collection 1 a C. And as much of a Y as Street Fighter Collection 1 was, Street Fighter Collection 2 is just as big of a question mark for me, because we don't even get a really cool version of a game like Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold. No, instead you just get Vanilla Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, which is my personal favorite version of the original Street Fighter 2, and Street Fighter 2 Turbo. All games that we had released before, all games that we had experienced numerous times before, and all games that are just kind of, why? Like, again, these all play fine. There's nothing wrong with any of these, and if you never had the opportunity to play them, then I guess this is the way to do it. And sure, it was a creative way for Capcom to reuse this IP and to take advantage of the PlayStation branding to put the game out on it, as well as on the Saturn, but I don't know. For me, this just doesn't rank. Again, the games play fine, but I wouldn't have bought it. This one gets a C. I'm going to be honest with you, this was the hardest game for me to rank in this video because I have a really hard time being objective about Street Fighter EX plus Alpha. So, straight up front, Street Fighter EX plus Alpha is a 3D polygonal fighting game on a 2D plane. So you just have 3D models. You've got some really cool characters. You've got your standard guys. You got Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Zangief, Guile. And then you've got some new guys. You've got my personal favorite, Crackerjack. There's Skullomania. There's Doctrine Dark. And then in this one as well, you also get characters of Dalsum and Sakura, and then hidden characters or boss characters of Akuma, Garuda, and M. Bison. I want to tell you that this game is spectacular because I adore this game. This is like one of my all-time favorite fighting games, but putting this up against everything on this list, man, this just does not hold up. I wanted to say this was an S. I wanted to say it was excellent. And truth be told, there's a lot of fun to be had with this game because I do think it's a really well-made game. But it's just, when I look at other games that are ahead of it and everything in the Fighter's Edge collection, like on its own, one of my favorite titles. But objectively, Street Fighter EX plus Alpha is average. It gets a C. All right, moving on to one of the best series ever created, and something I really wish Capcom would utilize the Street Fighter VI engine to bring this series back to the forefront. This is our first entry in the Darkstalkers series, and how perfect that I'm bringing this to the forefront right before Spooky Month, because Darkstalkers is a monster-based fighting game. You have analogs for the Creature from the Black Lagoon. You have analogs for Dracula, Frankenstein, and it's brilliant. It's a wonderful game. I absolutely love it. It's not as good as other games on this list, and despite the fact that I do adore it, there are things that its sequel that's on the PlayStation 1 does better, and subsequent games that are on this list do better than it as well, but it plays very similarly to Street Fighter. It's got the same kind of mechanics involved, and I mean, really, you're here for the monsters. That's why you're here, and the monsters are amazing. Darkstalkers, while it is a very good game, and there is stuff that I really love about it, objectively, there are games that perform better than it on the PlayStation. So I am going to give Darkstalkers, The Night Warriors, a B. It's above average, but it's not quite excellent. This game blew my mind when it released, because, for one, I never would have thought of putting Marvel superheroes in a fighting game. Never would have crossed my mind, despite the fact that I was both a comic book obsessed teenager and a video game, especially fighting game obsessed teenager. Never crossed my mind. Never once thought about it. But oh my god, am I so glad they did, because this game is just, it's the worst of the Marvel fighting games. I mean, it's straight up. Like, I mean, an argument could be made for Children of the Atom, but of the ones in the Fighter's Edge series, this is the worst of the Marvel fighting games. It's got a pretty limited roster. It's got some questionable characters in it. Like, I don't really understand the inclusion of Shumagarath and Blackheart. I mean, they're cool, and they're fun, and they look neat, and that's probably exactly why they're in here, but there were other villains I would have chosen ahead of Shumagarath and Blackheart, to say the least, and random Juggernaut. I don't remember Juggernaut being big in 95, but whatever. This game is a lot of fun. It's fast, it's fluid, it looks great, it sounds great. They used a lot of the voice actors from the X-Men animated series, which I thought was super cool. It's just, there are other Marvel fighting games that do everything this game does better coming up. So it's an above average experience. It's a ton of fun to play, but it's not quite excellent. Marvel Superheroes gets a B. Our first entry from my personal favorite branch of the Street Fighter universe is the original Street Fighter Alpha Warriors Dreams. I love this game. This solved so many things about the original Street Fighter 2 that I didn't know had a problem. First off, this really showed what the CP System 2 was capable of. The animations in this game are amazing. The effects on screen are fantastic. The characters just look so much more impressive than what we saw in the original Street Fighter 2. Everyone just felt more alive. Like, this really brought me into the franchise, and I just adored it. You had such great characters in this game. So you had your mainstays. You had Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, and Sagat, but you got a bunch of new guys introduced as well. You had Birdie and Adon, Guy from Final Fight, Charlie, Rose, Akuma. Like, oh, it's just so great. But the one that cannot be ignored from me, though, is Dan. I love the Alpha series. The super combos made me just, everything about the series I love. But this is the worst of the three. It's a very limited roster. There are things that other games in the Alpha series do better than this one, so much like Marvel Superheroes and much like Darkstalkers, this one gets knocked down just because everything beyond it surpassed it. This is going to get a B, but I still love it.
All right, halfway through, let's see where we're currently standing.
All right, starting off the second half strong with X-Men versus Street Fighter. And remember how I said Marvel Superheroes did a lot of really cool stuff? This one does so much better. This is our first versus game. So this is really where the Marvel versus Capcom series started. This paved the way for games like MVC2. You had huge characters on screen. I loved super jumps. I loved the combos. I loved the ability to team up like Ken and Wolverine. It just worked. It was fun. I enjoyed it. The sound in this game is spectacular. The effects are over the top. They fill up the entire screen. I just adore everything about this game. Listen to this roster. So you've got Cyclops, Magneto, Sabretooth, Wolverine, Storm, Gambit, Rogue, and Juggernaut from the X-Men side. And then on the Street Fighter side, you've got Akuma, Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Zangief, Charlie, Cammy, Dhalsim, and Bison. It's a who's who, and it's fantastic. It's a great game. I don't think it's as good as other games on this list, which is why it doesn't quite get to an S. It is one of my favorites, but it's going to get an A for this particular series of games. The second entry from the Street Fighter Alpha series is, of course, Street Fighter Alpha 2, creatively named, I know, right? And this just improves on everything the first game did. So you've got the same basic gameplay as before, but there's more stuff involved. You now have secret rivals that you're going to face during the course of the arcade mode. Akuma's now a regular character, so you've got the stronger version of him. You've got Shin Akuma to fight. I really just think this does so much excellently well. And if Street Fighter Alpha 3 didn't exist, this would be an S. You get new characters to play as. You get M. Bison, Akuma, and Dan are now immediately selectable as opposed to being hidden characters. You also get Dhalsim and Zangief added to the game. Gen, an assassin from the original Street Fighter. Relento, someone from the Mad Gear gang. And the introduction of the incredibly popular Sakura. It's just a wonderful game. If Alpha 3 didn't exist, like I said, this would be an S. But spoilers for future reference in the video, I suppose. Alpha 2 gets an A. This was the second most difficult game to rank on this list, and this is Rival Schools. I love everything about this game, but it's just one of those games that when I weigh it against other games on this list, it doesn't quite hold up. But let's talk about the game real quick. This is a true 3D fighter from Capcom, and it moves brilliantly well. It's fast, it's fluid, it's fun, it's funny. Like, there's some over-the-top stuff in this game that's just ridiculous. It is, of course, a Japanese trope of a fighting high school. I guess that's a thing. I've seen it in animes and stuff like that, and this is the video game version of it. You have different high schools that are rivals, and they want to fight each other, hence the name Rival Schools. Not that hard to figure out. But you get two different versions of the game. You get the standard version on the first disc, you get a different arcade version, which offers a little bit of a different challenge on the second disc. The characters look great, the gameplay is great. It's just a little bit clunkier than other 2D fighters on the list, so it doesn't quite elevate itself to an S ranking. And when I really look at the big picture, I do think Project Justice on the Dreamcast is a better title. So Rival Schools gets bumped back just a little bit, but it is still an A, and it is still one of my favorite games on the platform. So remember when I said that the sequel to Darkstalkers performs better than the original on the PlayStation? Well, here it is. Here's Darkstalkers 3, and this game is wonderful. The biggest knock I can give it is that some characters are missing from the original lineup of the Night Warriors. So Donovan, Huitzel, and Pyron are gone, but you get 4 different characters in their place. You get Queen Bee, Baby Bonnet Hood, Lilith, and Jeddah in their place. And you also get to play as Shadow, which is kind of neat. It's kind of a game mode where whoever you beat is who you play as in the next round, which I think is really cool. The other thing I really love about Darkstalkers 3 is the health bar system. So this is a game where rather than your health bar resetting at the start of the next round, it just kind of rolls over. It keeps going. You retain your health from the previous round and you keep fighting. Your opponent will have their health bar replenished, but you're just going to keep going. It makes the game a little bit more fluid. It actually feels more real, for lack of a better term. I mean, in a game where you're fighting as a bunch of monsters, it feels more real. But it's just spectacular. This game is a wonderful experience. It's a beautiful looking game. The graphics are spectacular. The effects in the game are marvelous. The music is great. I just adore it. Darkstalkers 3 gets an A. There are games on the PlayStation that perform better than it, but you can't go wrong with this one. Our first entry on the S list is Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. Now, before you say anything, yes, I know the Saturn version is superior in every single way. You don't get the tag team battles in this game just because of memory constraints, but for everything on the PlayStation, which is what this is being compared to, this game is spectacular. You have so many characters to play as. Listen to this roster. Marvel, you get Blackheart, Wolverine, Spider-Man, Cyclops, Omega Red, Shuma Gorath, Hulk, and Captain America. And from Street Fighter, you get Zangief, Sakura, Dalsum, Ken Masters, Dan, Bison, and Chun-Li. And then you also get secret characters. You get Dark Sakura, Mecha Zangief, you get the US Agent color swap for Captain America, and Blackheart becomes Mephisto. It's such a fun game. And again, no, it's not an arcade perfect port, but you get what you get on the PS1. And for a PS1 game, this one is an S rank. There will be some that do not like the ranking of Pocket Fighter on this list, and to you I say I don't care because it's my ranking. I adore Pocket Fighter. Is it a terribly deep fighting game? Not particularly. Is it a terribly serious fighting game? Not in the slightest. Is it a terribly fun fighting game? Oh god, yes. You have chibi versions of some incredible characters. You have a fun and creative fighting system that makes use of the gems from Gem Fighter, and it's just goofy fun. It's not gonna win any awards for best fighting game of all time by any stretch of the imagination, but if it's something that you want to just have some good fun with and be silly, Pocket Fighter's the game to go with. The roster of the game is really fun. You get Ryu, Ken, Zangief, Ibuki, Sakura, and Chun-Li from the Street Fighter series. From Darkstalkers, you get Felicia, Xianko, and Morrigan. Red Earth, which is an awesome arcade game that released on the Capcom Fighting Collection. You get Tessa, and then you get Dan and Akuma from Street Fighter as well as secret characters. Like I said, this game is goofy. There's some ridiculous effects and ridiculous animations in the game that are just hilarious, and I love it. Some people will not think this is a great game, and that's fine. You don't have to think it's a great game, but for me, this is one of the best on the PlayStation. This one gets an S rank. And this one's going last because this is my favorite of the PlayStation 1 entries from Capcom, even counting stuff that wasn't part of the Fighter's Edge line. This is Street Fighter Alpha 3. First and foremost, this game makes some changes by offering the different isms for the different fighting styles that you use. You get the A-ism, the X-ism, and the V-ism, and those allow you the different ways to use the different combos in the game. One of them, the V-ism, actually takes the super combos out. It makes things a little bit more like Street Fighter Alpha 2, so if that's the way you want to play, you can go with that. Now, where the game gets really excellent for me is the roster. Not only do you get the standard lineup that you got from Alpha and Alpha 2, you also get these new characters. You get Balrog, Blanca, Cammy, Cody from Final Fight, E. Honda, Julian Juni, Karen, who is magnificent and is just such a fun character to play, Rainbow Mika, DJ, Fei Long, Guile, and T-Hawk. The roster is stacked. There are so many different options to play with. The storyline is fun. Every character has something unique to them that they experience in the game. It doesn't take itself too seriously in certain aspects, where with other characters, it's a super serious moment as you go through the game. This is my favorite Street Fighter game, period. My favorite Street Fighter game from top to bottom is Alpha 3. It always has been since the first time I played it. It's going to take something really special to knock it off. Alpha 3 gets an S.
All right, my friends, there you have it. All 14 Fighter's Edge games from Capcom released on the PlayStation 1, ranked from worst to best. This is a fantastic subset, and it's a really fun one to collect for. And if you dig classic Capcom fighting game action, this is a subset you should look into getting. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree, if you disagree, if I'm wrong, if I'm right. And remember, keep it respectful. This is all an opinion. I'm not the arbiter of what is correct. This is just my opinion on the Fighter's Edge collection. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see some more fighting game ranking nonsense, check out the link on screen where I rank every Street Fighter Alpha 3 character. And again, I'm not the arbiter of what is correct. This is just my personal opinion. Until next time, folks, remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.